Hey guys, welcome back to Steve Basinger Fishing. Just wanted to do a real quick video and talk to you about spawning bass, sight fishing bass, and how I go about catching them. Now, I know this is kind of a taboo subject with some guys, depending on what part of the country you're from or just your state of mind. Some people do not approve of catching bass when they're spawning and they're on the bed. I know there's a lot of ways of looking at it. I am of the mindset that it's fine. I've read enough research on it, and that's my deal. But if it's not yours, that's fine. This video is not for you. However, if you are like me, stick around. I think I got something I can show you. Okay, spawning bass, sight fishing bass. One of my favorite times of year. It's the only time of year where you're catching bass that aren't hungry. For lack of a better term, you're pissing them off into biting. And that's pretty cool to me. I love the mind game with it. I love forcing yourself to just fish for this one fish that you can see and it's not hungry and you're gonna try to make it bite. That's a blast to me. So before we get into my little tips and techniques part of this video, we're gonna talk lures. Now, I'll tell you straight up, for me, the lures aren't the most important part. They're a part of it, but there's other factors to take into, and we'll get into those in a minute. So, lures. One of the first things I reach for is a soft plastic bait that's a little bulky and it's bright white. This one just so happens to be a Zoom Ultra Vibe speed crawl, I believe. By the way, I'll link all this stuff in the description. This is the one I've been reaching for the last couple years, but in other years it's been a white lizard, it's been a white tube, it's been a white jig. White, that's the key, something bright white. I want to be able to see my lure on the bed. Because it's amazing, right? When you go with a natural color, we'll say like this stickworm here, that's a watermelon and red, and even very, very clear water. Once this thing gets on bottom, it's really hard to see. You can see the fish just fine, and maybe you can make out like this is there, but it's hard to figure out what is a stick and what's this. It's a hard thing to figure out. So I like to reach for something white first. Then, if that doesn't seem to work or they don't seem to be reacting, I like to reach for this. This is a Matt Lures, I believe it's the U2 gill. See, it's a top hook design. It's not a swim bait. It's not a swim bait. It's just got a flat tail. This thing does not swim. But what's special about it is, first off, bass hate bluegills when, it's spawn time because they come in and raid their nest. When you set this on the bottom, it will sit nose down and it will sit hook up. It will not lay over on its side like so. It will lay like this or sit like this. So it looks exactly what bluegills look like when they're feeding in the nest. And that hook is pointing up. So whenever they come in and get it, maybe they only get the back half, which happens, but they're normally going to get this hook, which is really good. Doesn't have a lot of action, so really you're going to throw it in there. You throw it in on the bed and you just shake it on the bed. You don't want to really be dragging it along because it's just going to be out of there real quick and you don't have any other appendages really making any other action. But these are molded around the hook, around the jig. I want to say it's like a 3/4 ounce bait, and they're custom painted, so the paint job on that is very, very realistic. But I can only use this whenever I got a clean area. There's not a bunch of grass, not a bunch of moss, no sticks, because I got this open hook, right? It's going to get stuck on everything if I do it any other way. So when there is stuff to get hung up on, I go with this little guy. This is a Bass Pro Shops pesky perch. Just a soft plastic bait in a bluegill mold, and that color is like a green pumpkin with some green flake in it. I don't think the color would be really that important, but you can Texas rig it, to keep it when you get around snags. You can I've put it on a shaky head so it has that like nose down appearance. What else have I done with it? I put it like on a straight like ball jig head before when I had a clean bottom. Actually, before I ever had the Matt Lures, I would do that. There's another really good thing. It's a good bluegill, bluegill profile. Now this other one is one I'll admit I haven't done a lot of. I've just been experimenting with this the last couple of years, but when it works, boy does it work. I go with this one when I've tried, I tried the white stuff, the bright colored stuff. I tried the bluegill stuff, and that wasn't happening. Before I go to the more finessey approach, I go with this guy. I reached for a jig, but this isn't just any regular old jig. This is actually a Buckeye mop jig. You see, you got skirt material clear down here, like there's my trailer, and you got skirt material clear down there. And the reason I like this is when you flip this guy over and you put him in the water, these are round rubber skirts. This skirt material will actually flare out when it sits still. And the jig head allows the trailer to sit up, so you have the trailer actually sits up like this in the water, so you have the skirt all flared out and the trailer sticking up. Excuse me. And when I'm around a big bass, this seems to trigger them. I don't want to say more often than not, but when I've tried other stuff, it seems to trigger them pretty often. So I only use this one when I am around big bass, or just when I've tried everything else and it's just not working. That's when I go to this guy. So sometimes they don't want the bulky stuff. Sometimes you got to go finesse, right? Well, actually, let's go with this one first. I picked that up earlier. You got your regular old stick worm. This one just so happens to be a Gambler Ace. I like it because you can rig it a number of ways. You can wacky rig it, which is always great around the spawn. You can do a weightless Texas rig. You can do a light Texas rig, like an 1/8 ounce or something. I'd say most of the time, especially when I'm fishing for largemouth, right? If I'm fishing for largemouth, I'm probably going to Texas rig this weightless. Because largemouth, they want to spawn around a stump or a grass line or what have you, and being able to bury that hook and get this through the cover, it just works really, really well. If I'm around smallmouth, I'm almost certainly going to wacky rig this. So the other one would be a shaky head. I don't use this one a lot, but sometimes they just want something standing up on the bed, and that's where the shaky head really comes in. And then the other one that I do, I don't have it out right now because I don't have one rigged up, but I like to do a drop shot. But when I do the drop shot, I don't rig it up like I would when I'm normally drop shotting. I don't use a spinning rod in this instance, and I don't use light line or light hook for that matter. I use a 7-foot medium heavy action rod, like one I would throw a jig with, or a spinnerbait or something like that, and about 15-pound fluorocarbon. And I like to use probably about like a 3/8 ounce, maybe a 1/2 ounce weight, and a short tag leader, like maybe a 8-inch or so, leader or tag, whatever. So the hook is 8 inches above the weight. That's what I'm trying to say. And then I'm probably going to go with maybe that for the bait. I'm probably going to go with either the stick worm, the Ace, or maybe I go with an actual trick worm. Sometimes maybe I'll go with where to I put it. Here it is. Might go with this guy just to get them up off the bottom because it's up. Sometimes they just don't want something actually sitting in the bed. They'd rather kind of be hovering around it. I don't do that very often, but when I've ran the gambit, one of those words are hard. When I've tried everything, that's kind of the last thing I go with. All right, that's baits. That's the not important part, but it's the part that everybody cares about. Here's the important things, right? These are the things I don't really hear guys talk about in videos, but I'm positive it's the things that pros are doing. These are things I've kind of figured out myself the last couple of years, by accident, like most great ideas, I guess. But they've worked time and time again so many times that I'm just convinced this is what the guys that do this for a living are doing. So the first one is you want to make sure you watch the body language of the fish, right? Before I ever make a cast on it, before I ever do anything, I'm trying to be quiet when I'm coming up on it. And actually today I was doing this while I was shore fishing, so I'm trying to walk quiet along the shore. Because I want to watch the body language. I want to watch how that fish positions itself on the bed. When it knows that I'm there, does it stay? Does it run off? If it runs off, how fast does it come back? The ones that run away, if they come back within a minute or so, I will fish for those. The ones that just haul out of there as fast as they possibly can, like their tail's on fire, I'm probably not going to stay with those, because they're not really catchable. They're not locked on that bed so far yet. And you see that a lot with largemouth. Smallmouth, they typically lock on the bed pretty quick and they stay with it, and they tend to be pretty easy to catch. Can't speak for spotted bass. I don't know if I've ever caught a spotted bass that was spawning. So I want to watch that body language. How do they react? What do they do? So I'm going to watch for just a little bit. And then I also want to take note of when that fish did leave the bed, how did it leave the bed? I've noticed bass on beds, they have like an escape route that they like. This is the area this is the direction they like to leave the bed when they feel threatened. Well, I want to, whether I'm fishing, if I'm fishing in the boat, I want to position my boat to where that escape route is open. I realized this 2 years ago. I was fishing a tournament on Lake Okoboji in Iowa, which if you've watched this channel, you've seen me fish there a number of times. The day that I was fishing the tournament was actually on Sunday. Actually, it was Saturday and Sunday, but Sunday was the day I ended up catching this fish. I found this fish on Wednesday, and every single day I would come up and take a look at this fish. Every single day of practice, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then the first day of the tournament on Saturday, tried to catch it. Each day I would go up there. As soon as you could see the fish, it would blast off and run away. Well, the first couple of days I just thought, enough time hasn't gone by, it's not ready yet. That was what I thought. Well, every day I would come up to it, I always came from the same direction, right? So the bed was in front of me. I had a riprap bank going along the left, and then you had a bank that came this way. So it was like in this corner, right? So my boat was always coming this way, whereas the main lake was behind me. Bed's out here. Bed's in front of the boat. And the moment that you could pretty much see that fish would see you, and it would jet and run this way, and like its tail's on fire, right? And I tried this every day, and it was just never ready. So Sunday, the last day of the tournament, I pull up to this fish again from the same direction, because I need a good one, and this fish is like 4 pounds or so. And as soon as I see it, it blasts off again, like it has every single time. I'm like, okay, well, I don't have anywhere else to go. I decided to reposition my boat. So where I was coming like along the riprap to that little corner, I decided to reposition my boat over here, kind of closer to this other bank, and there was shade there. The boat was actually sitting in shade. And you know, that fish's escape route was like along that riprap each time. Well, once I positioned my boat over there, the fish seemed to be fine and did not care that I was over there. Now, I have a couple theories. Like, one is that I wasn't blocking its escape route. The other thing is that the boat was sitting in shade. And I'm not saying like it was hiding me, but maybe it hid some of my movements as well. You know, when I'm flipping, you know, taking another cast or whatever, it's just not seeing that as well. There was also some grass lines and stuff in the way. I don't know, maybe it's a combination of all those things. But I really felt like not blocking that fish's escape route made that fish much more comfortable with my presence there, because once it came back to the bed after I moved, it got there and it stayed, it never left. And maybe like 5 flips and I caught this fish just like that. So the other thing, or the second thing, I would say, third thing, I don't know, I'm losing count, I'm talking. One of the other things when you're bed fishing is when you come up and you look at them and you see them and you watch your body language and stuff, you also want to try to notice what it is that they're protecting, right? You may or may not be able to see the bed. It kind of, each lake is different depending on the bottom composition and whatnot. Maybe it glows bright white, maybe it's a black spot, maybe it just blends in completely, you can't tell. But if you pay attention to the fish, you'll notice, you know, he kind of turns, he's got this area, right? This is the area that he protects. Well, within that area, there's going to be a little small spot that he really cares about. If there's a, or she, I should say, if a lure comes through this one spot, that's the one area where they really pay attention. Well, you're probably pulling it through the eggs. That's why they care about that. You want to notice that, you know, when you're pulling your bait through, you want to be watching the fish and see what they do. If they come, you know, if your bait's here and you're swimming this way and then you just brought it through this spot and then they turn real quick, that's something you want to watch, because you've done something. Your bait is in some area that they really don't like. So you want to repeat that over and over again. Get it in that spot and shake it in that spot and get them to kind of key, and eventually they'll come to that. So then my last one is what I do when leaving it in a certain spot it's not really working. I'm gonna get really aggressive. And now this is one I just figured out like in the last 2 years, and I've never heard anybody talk about this at all. I am positive that pros are doing it, but I've never heard them talk about it. And what I'm doing is I'm hitting the fish in the side with the lure. I'm not snagging them, just so we're clear. I've never snagged a bass on a bet. I'm just hitting them with the weight of the lure. So if you could imagine, I'm throwing out in front of me and the bass is sideways or it's facing me. I don't want its head away from me when I'm doing this. I want it sideways to me, or I want the fish facing me. I will throw past it, right? I will throw past it, let my lure hit the bottom or bring it up to the fish, whatever. And I want to try to hit the fish in the side or in the tail, because what that's going to do, the fish is going to, at first it's just going to kind of swim away, right? It's just going to kind of swim off of it. But if you can do this enough, it'll keep turning circles. You keep turning circles. And the goal is to get these circles that it turns tighter and tighter and smaller. Eventually that fish will turn and just turn nose down and get that lure that quick. And when they do it, they normally get it pretty good. If you've sight fished before, you'll see a lot of times you just kind of barely pick up the pinchers or whatever of your lure and they never get the hook. In this particular instance, they'll get it pretty good. They'll normally inhale the whole thing and you can get them pretty quick. But when I say I don't want their head away from me, I don't want their head away from me. I want it to kind of surprise them. I know that they know the lure's there, they can feel it, they can hear it, all that fun stuff. But if their head is facing you and their tail is away and you're bringing it up from behind them or from their side, it is kind of a surprise, right? When they turn, it's almost like somewhat of a reaction of they have to get it. Whereas I've noticed when they're staring at it and you're bringing it up to them and trying to hit them in the head, they will normally just kind of move to the side because they're watching it come at them. I'm guessing. That's my best guess as to why they do that. Now with all sight fishing, the one thing that you absolutely need to keep in mind is that this is almost certainly not going to be, I seen a fish, I'm going to catch the fish immediately. It's normally going to be spot a fish, watch it for a while, make a number of casts on one fish, and if you're lucky, within 15 minutes or so you catch said fish. Sometimes you catch them on the first cast. It happens. I can probably, well, I can't count them all in one hand. It's happened a lot of times, but statistically not very many times. To catch them in 15 minutes or so, that's normally pretty quick. I've worked on one for over an hour. I've worked on one for like 3 hours before. I don't recommend doing that, but if you got the time, knock yourself out. Okay guys, that's about all I have. Hope you guys like this video. What I'd like you to do is, if you did like the video, well then, hit that thumbs up button and drop down in the comments. I'd love to know what you guys do on how it is you catch your spawning bass, if that's what you like to do. Whether it's the lure or just your specific techniques, because I'm always learning. I've said a few times, some of these things I threw in here, I just learned a couple years ago. So I am positive there's a ton of things out there that I have not learned yet and could really help me out. So anyways, guys, hope you liked the video. Until next time, we'll see you on the water.